Then his mother and his brothers came, and standing outside, they sent to him and called him. A crowd was sitting around him, and they said to him, "Your mother and your brothers are outside, asking for you." And he replied, "Who are my mother and brothers?" And looking at those who sat around him, he said, "Here are my mother and my brothers. Whoever does the will of God is my brother and sister and mother." Chosen family. The first time I ever heard that term was in high school. We had a psychology and theology teacher, and it was an open secret, at least among some students, that she had a life partner who was a woman. I say it was an open secret among some students because it was a religious school where teachers could get dismissed for being unmarried and pregnant, or for cohabitating, or for being openly gay. And so I assumed still, and assumed at the time, that the administration didn't know, or knew and pretended not to know. Girls also weren't allowed to wear pants at the school, skirts only. And students could also get suspended for dyeing their hair, or wearing non-leather shoes, or having hair that touched your ears if you were a boy. There were a lot of rules. Not all of them were spoken. One November, someone in our class bravely, in a lighthearted attempt at connection, asked our teacher, whom many people were afraid of, she was kind of stern, "What are you doing for the Thanksgiving holiday?" She quickly said, "I'm going out of town." It was very clear that we were supposed to launch into the class now. These clear signals did not deter our brave companion. I wondered if he had his homework. "Where are you going?" he asked. "Are you going to visit family?" "No." Another quick, short answer. But then she paused, and she smiled. "Well, yes, I have a really close group of friends, and we get together for the holidays. Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter. It's really nice. We've become a family. We all get together and cook a big meal. We've kind of chosen each other as family." It was the happiest that I ever saw her, thinking of being surrounded by these people who love her and whom she loved, committed friends, chosen to be the ones to travel through life with, all gathered around a table. All I could think was, I want that. I want to do that. That makes so much sense. It gave me a new, expansive feeling that it's possible to make one's own way in the world and find what one needs, to be able to be who one is fully with other people and be loved. It took me some time to look back on that story and empathetically ask questions that now I'll never know the answer to. Had her family disowned her? For whatever reason, was it not safe to be with her family? Probably, almost certainly. As a child, my introduction to what it means to be queer in this world was not a fun relative or a family friend or seeing a couple in the pews together at my church, or even television. Because things were much more hidden even during my lifetime, my introduction, very unfortunately, was the murder of Matthew Shepard, the 21-year-old from Wyoming in the States, who in 1998 was tortured and left to hang outside on a beam, crucified like Jesus because he was gay. When I heard I was in a public speaking contest among schools for news broadcasting, where we would arrange and write stories and report them. As I reported my top story, one of the judges, a young woman, began weeping. I wasn't sure if it was real or part of the contest. I wanted to comfort her, but I kept reporting because that's what news journalists do in front of a camera. The lesson rang loudly in my 10-year-old ears. This, crucifixion, is what the world can do to you when you are gay. But in many ways, it took me years to unpack. The short personal comments on my high school teacher's Thanksgiving plans were also an important early introduction to what it means to be queer in this world. The idea of chosen family. This phrase is one of the many, many beautiful gifts that the queer community has given to the world. Chosen family. It's what Jesus is talking about today, my friends. And looking at those who sat around him, he said, "Here are my mother and my brothers." You may not have known it when you were signing up for this whole church thing, but in choosing a church, a community to which you belong, you were, in a large way, also choosing a family to love and to be challenged by. Sister, brother, mother, father, siblings in Christ. The language we use in church is intentional. And as many of us know, it can get tricky at times because a lot of us have different ways of interacting with family based on the families that raised us. And also because church has some boundaries and asks some things of us that many families do not. There are many ways to create a family, and you don't have to have just one family. The beaches of Normandy created a family 80 years ago in an enduring link between America and France. June is Pride Month across the world and in Paris. Sometimes in queer-affirming places, people in general can forget how needed pride still is. In the U.S., I couldn't find the information on France, but I would love to talk with you if you know it. In the U.S., in a survey recently done by the Trevor Project, only 37% of youth feel that their homes are safe and affirming places for them to be open and honest about their sexual orientation. The percentage for transgender and non-binary youth is even lower. Only 1 in 3 feel safely affirmed in their families of origin. For many people, this church family gathered here and online at our cathedral is the first place or the first religious place where they have felt safe and welcome to say or explore the idea of saying, "I'm queer." People coming from countries where their sexual identity is outlawed, or people coming from cultural or religious or family backgrounds that have told them that there is something wrong with them because they are lesbian or gay or bisexual or asexual or trans, or any number of ways of being that our church celebrates as God's holy creation. That affirming role where we stand as this church, it is holy. It is water in the desert. It is a large part of the reason why I became Episcopalian, and maybe you too. It is an enormous gift, and an enormous responsibility for all of us here at our cathedral, whatever our sexuality is. This is holy ground. 20 years after Matthew Shepard's murder, I sat in a crowd of people at an Episcopal church, the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C., next to one of my best friends from seminary, as we waited for a church service, the interment of Matthew Shepard's ashes at that cathedral. Strangely enough, before becoming a priest, my friend was a news broadcaster. As a lesbian, she's fought for queer rights for decades and continues to do so in her corner of the church and of the U.S. It has been a long journey for her, just existing and living into her calls, and it has come at a cost. Costs that I personally am very grateful that she has given. Some very publicly, and very recently, more recently than many might guess. Pride is still needed. 20 years is a long time to have to wait to bury your child. Matthew Shepard's parents had wanted to find a resting place for him for a very long time, but they were afraid. Look at what people had done to Matthew's body when he was alive. Look at the protests that happened at his funeral. Matthew's parents decided on that particular time and place to lay him to rest because of their friendship with one of our bishops, Bishop Gene Robinson, the first openly queer bishop in the Episcopal Church, who had to wear a bulletproof vest to his own consecration in 2003. Matthew's parents felt safe and welcome enough in our church because someone showed them with their life and with their words, this church, this family of God is a safe and loving place. That is our work too. That is your work with your life and your actions and words to tell people who need it, to tell yourself too if you need it in this community, this church, this family of God is a safe and loving place. And then our job is to be that safe and loving chosen family. Our church and our cathedral is in such a unique position to be that safe and loving family for so many people. The struggle for justice and peace did not end with legal same-sex marriage or becoming more welcoming to all genders and all sexual identities. At the end of this month, on Saturday the 29th, thanks to our Rainbow Ministry, we are having a pride service here at our cathedral before we all head over to the Pride Parade and the Pride March afterward. If you haven't been to Pride before, it is a party that you do not want to miss. Really, that feeling when you come out of a joyous church service, multiply that and add glitter and rainbows and people living in the life-giving liberation of God, living in truth. Who would want to miss that? So come to Pride, especially if you're heterosexual. Pride is for friends and family too. Come to Pride, especially if you want to say or learn more of how to say, this church, this family of God is a safe and loving place. My dream would be for there not to be an empty seat in this house of God at that service. This family, it's all of us together. Just look to the next person in the pews or the next person in the live stream comments. And looking at those who sat around him, Jesus said, Here are my mother and my brothers, chosen family. Thanks be to God.